with vendors able to say essentially whatever they like and make whatever claims they think the market will react to, buyers and prospects out there are sometimes at a loss to who actually has the best product, who actually has the solution that's the right fit for their needs. So I think to really shut down some of that noise, fill that with authentic, true stories directly from customers.
Alrighty, folks, welcome to the State of Customer Storytelling podcast. I'm your host, Sam Shepler, and this is the show that is all about helping you as a B2B marketing leader, a customer marketer, a advocate marketer, and customer advocacy professional get all of the download on the best current practices and strategies. This podcast is brought to you by Testimonial Hero. Testimonial Hero helps over 300 B2B software companies easily create stunning video testimonials that close deals faster. You can view examples and find out more at testimonialhero.com. Today on the show, we have Evan Jacobs, the head of customer marketing at Chainalysis. Prior to Chainalysis, Evan was also the director of customer marketing at Catchpoint, the senior manager, global customer advocacy at Akamai, as well as the senior manager, customer marketing advocacy at Rapid7. So he has had a ton of experience in the customer marketing and customer advocacy space. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sam. I'm really pumped, excited, and looking forward to our conversation.
Likewise. And let's start off with talking about, why customer advocacy and customer stories really matter, right? Why does advocacy and customer stories matter now, more than ever?
It's a great question. It's something I think about pretty regularly. And if I had to really boil it down, I would think too, it's that a lot of the spaces that myself and probably a lot of the folks listening are involved in are pretty competitive spaces. And with vendors able to say essentially whatever they like and make whatever claims they think are the market will react to, I think buyers and prospects out there are sometimes at a loss to who actually has the best product, who actually has the solution that's the right fit for their need. And with everyone making wild claims and saying whatever they want in the vendor's own marketing material, I think there is a need more than ever for authenticity, for hearing directly from end users, customers, users. So I think that it's needed now more than ever. Not that hasn't been the case. I think it's especially now. There's just a ton of competition. Any spaces that are worth being in, there's well-funded, aggressive competitors there. So I think you need to really shut down some of that noise that vendors are spinning in the marketplace to really fill that with authentic, true stories directly from customers.
Completely agree. And it sounds like, customer stories, done correctly can actually, they're not just like a nice to have. It's actually can be a true kind of competitive advantage.
I think that's true. And I think especially in some of the spaces where my company operates, where we have a large private sector business, but also a large public sector business, we have the relationships, we have the success that we've equipped our customers with and positioned them for success. And that's where the rubber hits the road. We feel confident that our competitors don't have those stories, can't talk about those stories. So we think that, we think it is needed. It's it's on the menu. It's something that people are expecting it. They're expecting it in different flavors, in different ways, in different channels. So I think it's there, and we want to be proactive about it. Sometimes it's like, we can put that together if you need it, but rather let's be proactive and say, well, here's actually, because we know you, we know your use case and your need, like here's something that someone who's like you, because of all the different reasons, like you in a lot of different ways. Here's a story that might just be what you wanted to hear about. So here, take a listen, take a watch.
It's like, your competitors can copy a lot of your product, but they can't copy your customer stories at the end of the day. And then, you've been in the space for quite some time, and you have a lot of experience. How is customer advocacy and customer marketing evolving?
Sure. Well, I think one thing that I've seen over the last few years is, as a CMO or a new marketing leader would come in, they would typically seek to build out their team. Either they inherited a team or they're almost starting from scratch. They would seek to build out a team. And what I noticed at the beginning was, the CMO would always be looking, or a VP marketing always looking together. There's sort of starting five. Who do they need for that early, that first crew? They would always have their a demand gen lead. They would have marketing ops. They would have a product marketer, and maybe they would have a designer or design or visual person on the team. And that would sort of be who they would have. And I think that was fine. That made a ton of sense in those days a few years ago. And customer marketing, customer advocacy would come much later, years and, dozens later, right? So there would be lots of team filled out before there would even be the need or an interest or an inkling that, hey, this might be a role, a team that we need to start thinking about. But I've actually seen that change, which has really been super positive and exciting, that thinking rather than, hey, that person can come years later, actually that person needs to be really earlier. That person needs to come even when the team is small and growing, even when we might not have millions of customers. It's more core to the fiber of a growing SaaS marketing team, a high performing team, having a customer marketer on board and earlier is key. And also that person, it needs to be a dedicated person that has a little bit of experience. It used to always be, hey, just give it to an intern or someone doing it, 5% of their time. So I think there's definitely that recognition that A, the role is needed, B, it should come earlier, and C, it should be having a dedicated resource or maybe even a team and a budget accordingly for the tools and budget to run a program accordingly. So I think that took some time to develop, but I think we're there. And I think that battle has been fought and won. And I think really for the benefit of the teams, for our customers and everybody in the ecosystem. So I'm really happy to have seen that. And I think there's even more to come, but I think it's really exciting to have seen that evolution just unfold the last few years.
And what motivates you personally, have you seen this evolution, and, what motivates you personally about, the space and customer marketing and customer advocacy? What are you passionate about?
Sure. So for me, I came into this from a slightly different angle, but I'm I'm all about the relationships. I don't think anyone isn't, but I think for me, that was what drove me in. That was what kept me in, and that what keeps me in and keeps it fresh. Because I think there's no better way to invest in your customers, right? This is like the least transactional, when done right, I think the least transactional type of investment. You're not just getting a renewal, although of course a renewal is critical. You're not just selling a deal. You're there for the longer term. And also when things go right, you stay in touch with these customers even after they leave, because they're going to come back. Ultimately, as an alumni, they're going to bring you back from their next organization, or even if not, you can still stay in touch with them. So it's definitely a long game, and I love that opportunity to stay in touch while they're a customer, even beyond, and having them bring you into the next place. I think for me, it's all about relationships, and I think what better side of marketing to engage with customers and also work so closely with the customer success teams, which I love customer success organizations and the teams and the individuals on those teams. I think they're super dedicated, and I love to partner and collaborate and see how we can come up with programs that are supportive of everyone's goals. And so those are just some teams that I love working with. I think they're amazing. They go really above and beyond for the customers, and just partnering and seeing what makes sense for the org and the team and getting those programs going. So those are some things that I'm passionate about in this space. And it is fun because this is nothing more than relationships, especially with coming out of the pandemic. I think there'll be even more opportunities. People are really eager to, build those relationships within their own teams and across, vendors and partners that they work with. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement in there, I would say.
I love that you brought up partnering with, customer success, because that is such a crucial part of, the advocacy practice. What, have you learned there, or kind of what tips or perspective could you share with, another, customer marketer who wants to learn, how should I think about, partnering with success effectively?
Sure. So I think the first thing I always try to do, and I recommend it if others think it's appropriate, is to kind of put yourself in the shoes of that customer success team and that CSM, individual CSM, of, well, what are they going through? What's on their plate? What's on their radar, and how can you supplement what they're already doing, right? You're coming to them with ways to strengthen the relationship, because sometimes customer success is getting a lot of things sort of just thrown over the wall at them, like, hey, can you do this, or can you help with that? And of course, CSM wants to help always, and they're amazing at doing so. But I think really coming with lead time, with context, with what's in it for the customer, with what's in it for the relationship, and also kind of boxing in, well, what is the commitment for any of the people involved, for the customer, for the CSM, and really making it something that they want to say yes to, and not because you're a nice person, because they like chatting with you, because it's the right thing for the relationship. So I think really you need to have that relationship developed. And you got to build that over time. You have to earn that trust, because I think customer success, they have a critical, amazing, sometimes almost impossible Herculean job of maintaining these super high retention rates with so much moving in the ecosystem. So I think that being empathetic, understanding what they're going through, how you can support them, and get to know them, right? Sometimes being the bridge to CSM from marketing, if you can. Bring them any resources that you can, understand a little more about their world, and I think that'll go a long way. And they have one of the hardest jobs out there in the organization. I respect the hell out of it. I think they do an amazing job. They're super technical. They bring so much to the customer, and you want to be part of their go to customer. Like, you want to be part of how they engage with customers. So I think making it organic to how they work, making it make sense with their expectations they've set with customers, and show that you have the same exact goal that they do, right? And I think sometimes maybe that can get missed, but like, we have the same goal. We're pulling in the exact same direction, and then you do that repeatedly and over time, and you have the relationships built, you have that trust in place. And I think you'll be good to go. You've got the best partner, you've got the best placed people to be your wingman, wingwoman for customer marketing, customer advocacy. I think you couldn't find a better partner there.
I love, one phrase really stuck out there, come with lead time, come with context. I think that alone, and come with what's in it for the customer and the relationship, like, if we can, as customer marketers, can do all those three things, like, I think that it's such a good tip, because it's so easy when everyone's, busy, to just, make an ask and not take the time to fill out the proper context. But yeah, I think, that's such a key point. I know you've worked in, different size companies, how does, very large, and then as well as, growing, but relatively smaller, startups compared to like the Akamais of the world. How do you think about advocacy in, depending on the company, size and stage? I guess, how does it change, if it does, and how does it stay the same?
Yeah, so I think for me, this is all at the dialing this back to the core, to the root. It's, especially in the SaaS space, I found our customers are the same, right? In other words, whether you're engaging with them as a 200-person startup or a 10,000-person more mature organization, their day job, at least in those verticals that I've worked in, their personas, they're rather similar in the sense that they have a high stress job. They are working with a lot of vendors. They have, maybe lean teams. They have to really lean more into their tools, engage more with automation. So I found that the core of advocacy work and customer marketing work, it's rather the same. Whether your org is bigger or not, if you have a 400-person marketing team or 2-person marketing team, right? It's the customer. That little bit is not as critical to them. But if you're coming to them in a thoughtful way, in a smart way, in a way that they want to engage with you. But it also is what have you earned, sort of, because I think and that again, big or small, and maybe may not matter, but like, what have you earned? What have you invested in the customer? What have you helped them achieve? And I think that's much more important, getting the timing right and getting the understanding of where the relationship is than the size of the org. But the red tape internally, that shouldn't be, it isn't visible to the customer. So I think, because like I said, if you go back to what we said a couple of minutes ago, Sam, right, it's all about relationships. So if you can bring them that same type of resources, that same type of opportunities, that same type of understanding what they like to do, I think large or small, you've got a shot at deepening those relationships. You've got a shot at getting their scarcest resource, right, which is their time. So understanding that that's their scarcest resource. If you're a big part of their day or an important part of their program or their team or their success, then you have the opportunity to deepen the relationship, to work on customer advocacy opportunities and present those at the right moment. So I think if you're, regardless of whether you're large or small, if you are not a big part of their day, you're going to have to work a lot harder. You're going to have to earn that. You're going to have to really get more mind space and mind share with them.
That makes a ton of sense. And I think that's a perfect segue to talk about, this idea of how to capture customer stories in, challenging industries. You have, worked in cybersecurity. Now you're working in blockchain with Chainalysis. How do you capture customer stories, and what's your sort of mindset around that when, right now, for example, your customers are financial institutions and government agencies? How do you, and, nevertheless, you've been able to do it. So I'd love to, maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I think about it, Sam, it's very much around knowing who's on the other end, knowing what they personally like to do, what their persona is, introvert, extrovert, what do they like to do, what are their motivations, but also, especially more so I found over the last even maybe 6 months or a year, is that getting closer to their marketing and PR and comms team, maybe even legal, right? Of like, what message are they trying to put out into the marketplace? What are their concerns? What are their guardrails? What do they like to do? And sometimes you'll find someone you're able to amplify a message or put out a message into the marketplace that's very supportive of what they're doing or of their strategy. So I think it's become a must, I found in my experience these days, to really don't just assume, hey, like you have some need and they'll help you fill it, right? It's not about that. It's like, there's always a question, well, what's in it for, where will be the benefit to them? And you have to understand a little about their motivations, their needs as an org, as an individual, to really get to a yes, that yes may look very different, in a public sector versus a private sector versus different verticals. So I would say, and it's being flexible to what that yes looks like. It may be an anonymized story. It may be not about using your solution at all. It may just be more of a thought leadership piece, or even a career piece around how they've progressed in their career. It may be a panel versus all about them. So I would say it's really being flexible, not having a closed mindset of what success looks like here. So you give yourself that ramp and that runway to get something done that both sides will feel happy with. Done are the days of the puff pieces. Like I just don't see those anymore. There's no appetite internally or externally for those. So I think it's really going in with a more targeted approach, equipping your champion, your advocate, your customer to introduce you to the right folks. And I would say earlier in the process, right? It used to be, even a few years ago, like, hey, that was sort of just the rubber stamp at the end, that comms, legal, PR, content team from your customer. And now I've found the requirement, but also the expectation that you start that earlier. And that's going to yield so much fruit later, not just for this one opportunity, but for future opportunities. Well, you already have them in on your speed dial, right? You've already got them in your contact, so you could reach out to them and they can reach out to you. So I think and also just seeing it as non-transactional, right? You're not just getting this one thing and then you're done. You're squeezing them. It's not about that, right? It's, you want to do the right thing to open up so many future opportunities that you might not have even thought of when you were going into it. So really investing that time and that effort, it's so worth it. It's the right thing to do anyway. And like I said, I think it'll yield even more than you might have thought going in.
I want to circle back to, you said done are the days of the puff pieces. I think that's a really salient point, and maybe you can expound on that a little bit in case that just kind of went over a few people's heads. Like, tell me more. Yeah, like expound on that a little bit. Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it used to be like you could just get someone saying like, "Hey, I love you guys," or like, "You're the best," and it was sort of, you could pad that a little bit with some graphics, and it was one way, and it felt hollow, even if that's actually what they felt, and even if they are that exuberant of an advocate. I think people want to see more balance, right? They would like to see, because they know if you're in enterprise SaaS, it's not all, it's not all roses, right? Things can go, different directions, but I think it's about understanding at the depth, like more about that relationship. It's like, well, what's their team like? What, if things didn't go perfectly, how did they fix that? How did they go above and beyond? So I think it's things that you can differentiate beyond tools and features and software, because I think there's good products out there. Vendors have solid products, right? But you want to be able to differentiate on the people level, on the expertise level, on the equipping their team for success, whether that's training, whether that's your, services teams, you name it, to really go above and beyond. So I think just checking that box and getting something up there is fine, but no one's going to thank you just because you got something there and it's not representative of your customer or your own capabilities or that relationship. So I think it's really having that in mind before you start crafting anything, and also positioning your customer as the thought leader. It's sort of taking the lens off your own self. I think it's a more modern approach, and it's sometimes hard because you have pressure and you want people to say certain things, but I think that authenticity is there and needs to be there, and people are wanting that. And I think, like I said, going back to the old ways, I don't think there's an appetite for it.
I agree. And also I think it's not an appetite for that prospects have to consume that type of content too, right? So yeah, it's interesting just to kind of riff on this for a minute, like dealing with the pressure, or like, to me, and I'm curious on your take on it. I think one of the reasons historically, there was like pressure for, that puff piece or that thing to not be as balanced is because historically case studies and, advocacy projects were a bit more monolithic. It was like, okay, we're going to invest like a ton of money into this one case study or this one, singular customer video. And now what I'm seeing at least is like, still investing, but taking a more like atomized approach in like micro content throughout the buyer journey, which also seems to make room for a more balanced approach, because there's no longer this pressure of like, we need to like get all of this good stuff about, us as the company in this single video. It's like, okay, we can have the more company centric piece, then we can have the career piece, then we can have the thought leader piece, and sort of atomizing this whole, all this content, that came out of maybe one interview. But again, like, I think this willingness to use, the content more broadly in smaller pieces relieves, I think, a bit of the pressure to, make it that perfect puff piece in, one monolithic instance. But curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I'm definitely with you there, Sam. And I think it's all about dialing it back earlier into the process, understanding where that content might go, who's gonna run with it, right? Because I think probably all of us at one point have been in a scenario where like you produce content and you're like, well, is there any takers for this? Like, is it going to sit in the drawer, so to speak, or does it actually have a home? Does it have someone who's going to drive it forward? So I found really kind of workshopping that around and figuring out as early in the process as you can of like, well, who might have a need for this? And I've had great success with my our product marketing team, on my team, we have someone who's a partner marketer, and working with her and saying, okay, wow, this is a key partner. The customer uses us and our partner, our integration partner. So how can we get even more bang from that of layering in questions around what's that partnership and how's that integration working, so that it has yet another stream of usage, so it's not just you having to find a home for it. You're sort of giving another set of owners to it who can run with it. So I think it's all around, getting the most value from a single asset you produced. And that way you alone are on the hook for finding those, the owners or the content, the content homes for those. You've got other built-in people who are hungry to use that and to have the access to that kind of fresh content. So dial that in early and bake in those questions accordingly, to your point. So that way you can carve it up and have it live in lots of different ways, especially, Sam, because people may have shorter attention spans, right? I think, 5-7 minute pieces, you're not gonna have people that are gonna stay on that too long. So you wanna also keep in mind how people consume the content.
Such a good point. And speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about, the different mediums, for customer stories. How do you think about the mix and the pros and cons between case studies, third-party reviews, customer video content? I'd love to hear, and maybe even reference calls or panels as well. But I'd love to hear how you think about the mix of all those different kind of mediums.
Yeah, so I think the good part is, I think it's definitely not one size fits all. And I think people consume in different ways and have different needs, right? So sometimes I wouldn't want to trade one for the other, right? Say, hey, this or that. But I would say like we talked about a couple of minutes ago, Sam, like, hey, you have someone who's in a public sector. They may not be able to do a customer story, but they could do a review because it's anonymized, or it just lists their vertical and not their name or their company name. So I think you're actually expanding the pie, right? If you're just saying, hey, they can only help in one way, or they can only be an advocate in one way, you're gonna shrink your pool down. So I think they're all needed. And just talking to our go-to-market teams, all the content is needed, right? I think it's regardless of what the original source is, whether it is a review or a testimonial, or it's a pull quote from a testimonial. So I think people are almost agnostic as to what the source of it was, but what is that really snackable piece? What is that nugget that actually hits the road? So if you have a minute and a half or 2 minute video testimonial, you may be able to get those pull quotes, and maybe people aren't into video, but you have a quote that you can put onto a slide or drop into a sales deck, that the team can pull a slide from there. So I'm open to all of them, and I think all deserve sort of love and equal attention, that because the go-to-market teams may not they may not care necessarily what the source was, as long as it's something that can help support the message they're trying to share to prospects and buyers. So I think, everything is there's a room for all of them, I would say.
As long as they're not puff pieces, right?
Yes, see above. Yeah, see what we just talked about, right?
Absolutely. So they're all needed, but don't make them a puff piece. That's you heard it here first. But I love that perspective. You mentioned video a couple times, and I'd be curious, being a customer video person myself, be curious to know more about, how do you think about video? I guess both from like a functional level and being able to break it up into text, et cetera, but also from like an emotional level, or like just like the power of the medium.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing like it. I think it's so flexible, and it's how people like to receive content, especially when it was harder to meet people in person with everything going on in the world. And it's easier to resonate with someone when you can see them, you can hear the kind of the passion in their voice, or how they're just kind of leaning into it. So I think there's really nothing like it. And not to say that it's sort of hard to choose favorites, but I think video, it has so much reach, especially with the social platforms out there. We have an amazing social team who's eager for that content, who's eager to really highlight the success of our customers. So I think it's just, I think, how people are receiving it. I mean, people in their personal lives, just for their own entertainment, right? We know that's how people are preferring. So I think it's here to stay, and I'm a big believer, whether you capture it remote, like we're sort of doing here, whether you capture it in person as that becomes more available now and into the near term. I think it's here to stay, and I think it is because it is so flexible. You can do mashups of content, you can do montage. There's just really limitless of what you can do with it, that I think it's here to stay, and I think it's going to have a great seat at the table for going forward as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point too, especially for social, right? Because it's we have this sort of, I think, interesting dynamic where you mentioned reach, where like the people who control the algorithms, like the platforms, understand that video does, on average, better from an engagement perspective. Therefore, the algorithm is, actually incentivized to show more people video, right? So it's kind of this tailwind, I think, that people are able to get behind if they use video on social. What does the future look like for customer advocacy pros, and what are some of the biggest challenges or opportunities that are coming in the future? So
I think the future is super, super bright for customer marketers, customer advocate folks. It's the seat at the table is there. There's probably more momentum now than at any time that I've seen. I think the pandemic helped. It was already happening. I think it might have just accelerated that even a little bit, just with the focus on not necessarily net new logos only, which had such a huge focus. It's actually about our existing customers. Can we invest more in them? Can we interest them in more parts of our portfolio that they might not know, ensuring that retention is where it needs to be. So I think that side of the house is getting more attention than ever, and as it should. So I think customer marketing finally evolved to where it was because of lots of things, because it's been earning that seat at the table. There's analyst coverage. We have amazing analysts. So I think there's conferences, there's get-togethers, there's the infrastructure to do that. There's budget. So I think it has now all the pieces. It has that level of commitment to it. It's not something that someone is demoing. It's not a CMO just trying it out. It's not an experiment. It's arrived. And I think that just seeing the excitement in the space, just there's more recs opened up than ever at different levels. I think it's here to stay. I know it's here to stay, and I think the only challenges are just going to be, how do you, once you've achieved something, how do you continue to build on that, right? It was all about, hey, the underdog, and it's, then you can turn the corner and you achieved what you wanted. But how do you build on that? How do you keep it fresh, and how do you maintain what you're doing while keeping that customer always at the center, right? It's never forgetting that customer is the North Star, investing in them, and sometimes having the confidence in your team and the program and what the right thing is. May need to say no to certain things, and I think that's okay. And I think that's part of having that seat at the table, is like, well, here's why. Not just saying no, because of course everyone in this role and this type of work wants to say yes to everything. But if it's not the right thing, maybe for the customer from a timing perspective or the opportunity or whatever it is, it's saying no, but coming up with a solution. Here's a better way. Here's a different approach. Here's another option. Here's another customer. So it's really having that confidence in yourself and the program and the team to always do the right thing for customer, to be their protector, to never ever jeopardize that relationship for something that's short term. And I know I won't do that, and I know all my colleagues in the space will never do that. And I think having the confidence to lead that way and to have that relationship with different parts of the organization, whether it's sales, services, support, customer success, you name it. And I think that and I see that continuing to head in that direction. So it's a ton of opportunity for folks in the space and people thinking about entering the space.
I love that where you, to put it, be the customer's protector, always do the right thing for the customer, and, think, don't jeopardize things for the short term. Wrapping up here, Evan, anything else around customer advocacy or customer stories, that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share, or, that you think would be useful or interesting?
I think just I'm excited to see what people are innovating. I would say let's keep the sharing going. I found that the community is so open, so willing to hop on a call, share what they know, hear what you might have heard, and I can't minimize the importance of that. And I think let's keep that going. Even as there's more people doing this, and you look around like, wow, you might have known at one point, you thought everyone in your region or maybe in the country who was doing what you're doing. And now it continues to grow and more SaaS companies are doing this. So I would say, excited to see like what innovations people are thinking about. It's such a creative team. It's such a creative people come in with that amazing mindset. And I would say, where else can we be drawing people in from? Like, can we maybe customer success folks that are looking to do something else, maybe they might enter this space more with an amazing background. So I would say, I think it's eager to see like who that ecosystem that continues to collaborate more, either as actual practitioners or just really as strong partners of folks in the space. So I think that will continue to evolve, and I'm excited to see, like how that collaboration continues to flourish.
Evan, this has been fantastic. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to, follow you, connect with you, or learn more?
I think LinkedIn is probably the default. Find me there, catch me anytime, and I'd love to chat, hear what's on your mind, and share, kind of both ways, right? I learn as much as I can. That's when I first got into this space. Didn't necessarily have great depth of experience, but I said, like, let's start sharing. So I learned a ton from people, and I love sharing what I know and hearing what they have to their expertise and their knowledge and their experience, because it can vary, but it's unbelievable what the sharing out there. So I'm super thankful to that and can't wait to keep it going.
Fantastic. Evan, this has been a blast. We'll have to do a round 2 sometime. And thanks for being on the show.
Got it. Looking forward to it, Sam, and catch me anytime for round 2.
Alrighty, folks, that was a fantastic episode with Evan Jacobs. Just a couple of my favorite takeaways I wanted to share. Some really, really good tips on partnering with the CS team, with customer success. First and foremost, put yourself in their shoes. Come with lead time, come with context, come with what's in it for the customer, their customer that they are working with, and their relationship, and, make your asks kind of, stand on their own 2 feet, not just because you're a nice person, and, be empathetic, be that bridge between marketing and, customer success. Some other really good points about capturing customer stories in traditionally challenging industries. We didn't get into it too much, but I believe Evan actually has a customer story from the IRS that he captured. So, that should give you a feeling for how well he's been able to do this. And as he said in the episode, it's all about figuring out a way to amplify the message that they are also trying to get out into the marketplace, and aligning with them there. Also being flexible on what it looks like. Maybe it has to be a bit of a career piece, or a thought leadership piece, or a panel, versus something else, right? Being flexible, and maybe it is even anonymous. And just when more you deal with those types of industries, the more flexible you have to be, but you don't have to, throw up your hands and quit. It's absolutely possible. And then just different mediums, people consume in different ways. As long as they're not doing puff pieces, you want all of the different content types, and it's about expanding the pie. And for example, anonymous third-party reviews, that's another option, right? So it's all, you really want to cover all your bases there. We talked about the power of video, and just creating atomized, snackable content, social reach, and then a lot of additional good stuff just around, the future of customer marketing, and customer marketing has arrived. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'm Sam Shepler from Testimonial Hero, and we'll see you in the very next episode.